fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello and welcome to the Salt Strong live stream and podcast. I almost messed that up. My name's Rich Natoli. I am the host of the show, and I am joined, as usual, even though he hasn't been here in a couple of weeks, with the lovely and talented Ed Gobo. Ed, how you doing, man?
Good, Rich. I'm glad to be back. I mean, we got some guests here tonight that are part of a really awesome organization that's doing stuff for our veterans, and I'm pumped. It's a good one to come back to.
It really is. I've been looking forward to this. I've been talking with one of the gentlemen who's coming on, Zach, for a little bit about possibly coming on. And I was asking him to help me get connected with somebody with Heroes on the Water that would respond to an email and help me get set up with somebody to come on. And she said, well, sure. And then she went right to Zach and said, hey, you're an ambassador. Do you want to come on? So it went full circle real quick. So guys, everybody, welcome. This is going to be a fun one. So we have two guys here. I'm going to bring them on in just a moment from Heroes on the Water organization. We're going to talk all about what the organization does, the events that they have, what it's for, and I'm really looking forward to this one. You know what, Ed? Let's not wait. Let's just bring them on right now. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right. So I'm bringing on the screen right now. We have Zach Clift, who is one of the ambassadors for Heroes on the Water, and then we have Thien. How are you guys doing?
Doing great.
Good.
Thanks for having us, Rich.
Good.
Yeah, welcome. It's great that you guys are on, and man, this is the time of year to talk about this kind of stuff. I think people are wishing they were on the water throughout a lot. Well, man, most of the East Coast has just had terrible weather, and I keep getting messages, and they're like, what else can we talk about? Because I'm not going out fishing, so they don't want to talk about fishing for fluke. They don't want to talk about striped bass, and they're saying, what else is there that we should, that we can talk about? And I said, well, we've got those on tap. Ed and I have been talking about that for a while. And thank you to both of you for coming on, because this is going to be a great topic.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. So Zach, why don't we start with you? Why don't you just give a quick intro, tell everybody who you are, and give the high level view of what Heroes on the Water is.
So my name's Zach Clift. I'm the coordinator for the Central California chapter of Heroes on the Water. And how we'll call it HOW as the acronym. That's what we all go with. Is a national nonprofit with over 49 chapters nationwide, and it's a veteran and first responder support organization that utilizes kayak fishing to get our veterans and first responders outdoors, because I love being able to fall back to science and studies have shown that being in the outdoors, whether that activity is fishing in a kayak or hunting, truly does help our heroes with TBI and PTSD. It really does help get our heroes integrated back into society when they come home.
That's great. Thien, how about you? You want to give a little bit of your background and your involvement with HOW?
So I'm a veteran. I found the HOW organization just by chance. It was there was like an advertisement. I think it was on Facebook, or it was an email through Eventbrite, and it said free kayak fishing for veterans. I was like, free fishing? It sounded a little sketchy, right? So, but I tried it, and that was about 2 years ago, and it's been a phenomenal experience. I have my own kayak, and I still want to go out with these guys. I can't say enough positive things about it. I even tell all my veteran friends that they should at least look into it, because whether or not you realize you need the help, it's there, and it can help you. Just your stress. It's everything. It's so great. It's so great.
Well, I think to Zach's point, and I think fishermen, regardless of your background, there's one thing that I think most people will agree on, and that's the stress kind of melts away when you can get out there. You can kind of lose yourself out on the water. You can lose yourself in that battle one-on-one with that fish that you're targeting. And you just get to get out there and relax in the sunshine. I know for me, a lot of times, now I go fishing with people almost all the time, but there's something really cool about just getting out there into nature and just disappearing into the marshes and nobody can see me. Now, you guys don't have marshes out in California like we do, but you're out there in the big swells. But Ed, what do you think?
It's definitely a spiritual experience for sure. It's definitely my happy place. When I'm having a rough time, that's where I go.
So Zach, let's go into specifically. So Heroes on the Water, and let's talk a little bit about the organization specifically, things, the size of it, where can people find it? What are the types of events? You want to fill us in on a little bit of that?
Yeah, absolutely. As far as where they can track down their nearest chapter, that's going to be on the national website, which is heroesonthewater.org. And you can go through the tabs there and find chapters in your area. Like I said, there's 49 chapters across the nation. Texas and Florida are loaded with chapters. California has 2. There's Vegas. I mean, there's so many chapters. The Midwest is a little scarce. I'd like to see some more chapters in the Midwest. And I think Thien kind of touched on it when he said free kayak fishing, and that's the big part of Heroes on the Water. Is it's absolutely 100% free for veterans and first responders. We provide everything: kayaks, rods, reels, lures, bait, food, breakfast, lunch, drinks, everything. All they have to do is show up.
Wow, that's awesome.
That is, that's where fundraising and getting the name of how out there more helps not just our local chapters, but the national organization as a whole. Because it's 100% donation-based organization. Like I mentioned before, it's a 501c3 national nonprofit. So any donation made to Heroes on the Water can be considered a charitable donation on your taxes. So that helps a lot with individuals and larger corporations that would like to donate. Howe's been around for 15 years. It was the organization was started 15 years ago by Jim Dolan, who unfortunately has since passed away. But we're all carrying on his legacy and what his vision for How was, and making it something I believe that is bigger now than he ever could have imagined. Since in that 15 years, Heroes on the Water has helped over 56,000 veterans and first responders by getting them out kayak fishing. And we don't forget the family members of those veterans and first responders. They are always welcome to come to our events and participate. So in addition to the 56,000 veterans and first responders that we've helped along the way, there's another 14,000 family members who have benefited from the How program.
Wow. That's awesome. Thien mentioned, is it too good to be true? Like, really? It's just, I just show up and I get out on the water. So you literally have everything for them.
Everything.
Wow.
There's some states here in California, I won't get into the politics of it, but the only thing that the veterans have to have is their fishing license. There's some states where you can get a waiver from Department of Fish and Wildlife that covers veterans. California makes that really hard to do. So the veterans that don't have and first responders that don't have their license, a lot of the times we will get donations before an event. We have a couple that is on our leadership team who consistently donates the money and just says, if veterans or first responders don't have their license, we will pay for it. So we really try and make sure that everything is covered. And
that's awesome.
All the safety gear, all of our guides have VHF radios. PFDs are 100% mandatory at all times. The organization is very safety based, as any serious kayak fisherman should be anyway. But
that's well. So let's talk a little bit about what it looks like. So let's say there's a HOW event, and one of our viewers or listeners is looking. They're hearing this and they're saying, "Well, I just saw there is one coming up." They're interested in going. What does and maybe Thien, you can tell a little bit about this. What is the experience like when you show up? Let's say go back to the first time that you showed up. What was the experience, and kind of walk us through the morning until you got out on the water?
So I'm going to back up a few days before that, because I was going to this knowing nothing, and I wasn't expecting a lot. And it was in an area that I had never been to. So I actually contacted Zach through email. I was like, "Hey, like, where do I park? How early do I need to get there?" I needed as much intel as I could get, right? Because it's just I didn't know what was going on. But all that, Zach's been great. And when I got there early, and first person I talked to was an individual named Rick, and he was a veteran, and he's on a leadership team. And that feeling when I talked to him, it was something special, because before that I didn't have a lot of interaction with veterans. It's just been a while. I got out in 2004. After that, it's normal civilian life, family, work. But I think Rick was probably the first one I talked to in a long time, and he actually works at the local VA, and he convinced me to pursue my disability, which that in itself is a positive thing, because I think a lot of veterans, including myself, when we get out, we get out. We're done. We think we're healthy enough. We don't need to do all that stuff. But like Rick said, it's those 10 years later, 20 years later, your body breaks down. It's because of what's happened in the military. So I was real thankful for that. There were other veterans that were there. It's like being back on base. Even though you never met them before, I always say there's no fraternity like being in the military. You go anywhere and you meet up with another veteran, and you're back home. So after little chit chat, we had a safety briefing. Talked about what to do on the water. How just in case you fall out of the boat, how do you get back in and whatnot. Then each one of us were paired up with a guide. So this was really, really surprising me, because we had our own personal guide. Right? Where else are you going to get that kind of
right
level of service? People are paying hundreds of dollars to go out like this, and we're getting this for free. It was everything about it surprised me. So I hooked up with this individual named Brad, and we just chit chat, and it's just like hanging out with your cousin. That's how it felt. It was just when you're old friends and whatnot, and we went out fishing, just talking and just catching fish. It was so relaxing. I remember telling them before we even put the poles in the water, I was like, we went out maybe 200 feet, and I was just sitting there, just, looking at the ocean line, and like this is nice. This is nice, just to decompress out there, and nothing else out there. There's nothing else quite like it.
No, not at all. We have a captain that comes on every once in a while, and I wish I could remember the term that he uses. His name is Scotty Sevens, and he's a local guide in New Jersey, and he has such a good way of just talking about the feeling that he has when he hits that water. It's just like he may have even said that's his church. He gets there, and it's like everything just kind of melts away, and he just gets into nature, and he can relax, he can decompress. And I can't think of a lot of people more deserving of that relaxation and that de-stressing, however temporary it may be, as veterans and first responders. Because I can tell you, growing up in a police family, it takes the toll It really takes the toll. My father went through it. He had, I know, even though he never said anything, different generations. I know that he was suffering from some pretty severe, I don't know if it was PTSD or not, but when you're a homicide detective for 25 years, you see stuff and you experience stuff it's difficult. And for him, getting on the water was always his escape. And he did it as much as possible, living 2.5 hours from saltwater. He was there as much as possible once he hit retirement. And man, you talk about how it's just relaxing. You're only 200 feet off, right? 200 feet off the shore, and it just hits you. It just comes over you. I love it. So you're out there with the guide. Let's say that a beginner fisherman has never been out there. What is it like out there? Maybe Zach, you can jump in on this. Let's say you're going out and you're going with one person. Let's say it's me, and I've never been on the water. Are they baiting the hooks? Are they saying what species they want to go for? What does it look like?
We're baiting their hooks and handing them their rod. It really depends whether it's a freshwater event or a saltwater event. Our freshwater events, our chapter has 22 kayaks. And our freshwater events, we'll put somebody in each one of those kayaks. Our saltwater events, we keep them to 10 or 12 participants just for safety reasons, because the central coast of California can get pretty sketchy at times on the salt. If we're on a lake, we'll give them a rod and some baits and let them do it themselves. But like when we do our saltwater events, sometimes we go after halibut. Sometimes we go after rockfish species. So we're doing that for them and then just handing them their rod and letting them fish. Like when we go for rockfish, event that Thien came to that time was Avila Beach, California. So where we launch on the beach is about 1.5 miles. It's a mile till you hit the break wall. So you're about 1.5 miles till you're at your first fishing spot that we have marked. So we really don't want them going through the surf with rods and reels. We'll launch with all the gear and then give it to them when we're out there. Because by the time you drop on your first rock pile, you're 1.5 miles, 2 miles from shore in 150 feet of water. And that's one of our rockfish events. Like now our halibut events, we do Santa Barbara Harbor, Channel Islands Harbor, and Oxnard, and we're right inside the harbor, so it's not quite as serious of a safety concern for us.
So Thien, you decided your first one was going to be for rockfish.
I had no idea what was doing there.
You went for it.
I saw free fishing kayak. Sign me up. Let's try it.
That's awesome. So I've never fished the California coast at all. And that is one thing that I want to get out and do that. And I think it's awesome that this organization got you onto a type of fishing that a lot of kayak fishermen in the United States wish they could get to and would pay a lot of money to get out there and do. If I had a way, if I could afford to get my kayak out there and all my equipment and find somebody to help me, find the right spots out there, I'd be dropping a lot of money for that. And that's just incredible. So you're out there and you're fishing out there for the first time. And how did you do that day? Did you catch any fish out there?
Oh, I got my limit.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Thien killed it that day.
Yeah.
Now, did you have a background of fishing before doing this event, or?
I fished when I was young. I remember maybe junior high-ish, maybe a little bit in high school, just at the local lake, just throwing catfish, just, chicken liver and whatever. Then I stopped. I went, other things was going on, in the military. And this last event, that event was the first time I'd been fishing in decades. I've never fished in the salt before that.
So now, are you a fresh guy or a saltwater guy?
That's what I was gonna ask.
Yeah. I'm a salt guy. Zach's been trying to get me to learn how to be a better freshwater fisherman. But
correct me if I'm wrong, but there's something about the salt air. Once that hits your face, it just it calms.
It makes you
I don't know.
stronger.
It does for me.
Salt makes you stronger, right?
I believe that. Yeah. Yeah. I'm addicted to the salt water. I could literally walk for 5 minutes and be at a really nice stream that has everything from muskie to trout to smallmouth bass. And and catfish and, those types. I don't think I've ever fished that as an adult. Now I grew up in this area. That same river goes near where I used to live when I was growing up. I never fished it as an adult. I would rather jump in the car or in the truck and head 2.5 hours to 4.5 hours to the saltwater just because of the difference.
Yeah.
Not that I'm knocking salt or freshwater. It's just I tend to believe once you get that taste of saltwater, and for me, a lot of it is not knowing. You never know what you're going to get when you're in the saltwater. You can get some really cool stuff. You're out there fishing. We could be fishing for our baby version of halibut, the summer flounder out here, and
that giant ray that I got.
Yeah. I was fishing for flounder, and I pulled in a ray that it was probably about 5.5 to 6 feet across. On this little light gear 10-pound test, and that's just cool. A lot of people get upset when they get those things. I was like, nah, that was pretty awesome. That's one of the things that I love about the saltwater.
We call those mud marlin.
Mud marlin.
I like that name.
That is a good name for it. Yeah.
I see in the comment section, last cast asked if we had a chapter in North Carolina.
Yep, I was actually getting ready to post that.
We do not currently. There's 2 chapters in South Carolina, but there is not a chapter in North Carolina. But the organization is always looking to start new volunteer programs. So if anybody is interested in starting a chapter, they can reach out to the national website, and you will get put in touch with Camille Knoll, who is in charge of onboarding new chapters. It's a lot of work, and you got to have a good team behind you. You cannot do it by yourself. But just to answer last cast's question, there's not currently a chapter in North Carolina. I double checked on my phone while Thien was talking and checked the website. There's 2 in South Carolina, but there's not one in North Carolina currently.
And then there's
another question
that I had marked from Eduardo. He says it's awesome, and he just recently got, I guess, off of active duty, moved back to Houston. He wants to donate. So do you want to throw a plug out there?
Absolutely. If you go, Eduardo, if you go to the national website, there is a donate tab. You can donate directly to the national website, or you can also through the website. It's a little difficult to navigate, but you can donate to individual chapters. And if he's in Houston, no kidding, Texas has like 9 chapters. So Eduardo, if you're interested in becoming a part of HOW, going to an event, or donating to a chapter, there's like 9 chapters in Texas. Texas and Florida have more chapters than anybody.
So I was wondering about this. So let's say that there's an event nearby, and you're not a veteran, but you'd like to go and kind of participate in some way. Is there a way to do that?
Absolutely. We always, whether you're a kayak or whether you're a fisherman or a kayak angler at all, we always need volunteers. Like I said, we have 22 kayaks, and at events, it takes a lot of work to get those 22 kayaks rigged up, and 22, probably 30 rods, just so we have some extra all rigged up and tied up and bait chopped up and ready to go. So our chapter, we're always looking for volunteers. And I know that every other chapter across the nation is the same way. So every chapter also has a Facebook page. So if someone's interested and they want to find a chapter, they can go to the national website, find that local chapter, and then they can go on Facebook. And the leadership team for each chapter monitors the Facebook, and you can shoot your local chapter a message and just say, hey, I want to volunteer, or I'd like to participate. Or almost all the chapters now have switched over to Eventbrite for signing up for the events. Our chapter in particular, we do an Eventbrite for the participants, and then we do an Eventbrite for the volunteers. That way, just for our record keeping purposes, we know exactly who was there and whether that volunteer was a first responder or veteran themselves, or because we get that a lot. is veterans who don't fish, or first responders who don't fish, and they're just like, I just want to come out and help. Like, I love this. Can I come help?
Right.
And the answer to that is absolutely 100% yes.
Wow, that's great. And and it covers veterans from all branches of the military, and first responders are defined as what?
Well,
Police, fire,
yes, but yes, police, fire. But I will expand that for our. I can't speak for every chapter, but
That's what I'm getting at.
I
Okay.
will. Our chapter will accept, prison guards, doctors, nurses, ambulance drivers. Like they're all part of the first responder umbrella, in my opinion. So I will not. I will not. We have one lady who came out with us for a long time and was a first responder. Technically a first responder, right? And she's a great lady. Her name's Bonnie. She's been to a lot of events. But in her city, animal control is part of the police department. So she came to our events and was able to participate. She was animal control, but she was part of the police department. So she was allowed to come to our events. I was not going to turn her away.
That's awesome.
And
it's all that makes sense, though.
Right. Absolutely. And like I said, I can't speak for all chapters, kind of, but I would venture to say that from a national standpoint, like, they're not going to say no to that, or something like that, a prison guard or something like that. Like that's all my kind of definition of a first responder is a authority position that this civilized society cannot live without. So
that's pretty good.
We need prison guards. We need doctors and nurses and police officers and firemen. And there's all kinds of different firemen. I don't care if you're a city fire or you're a state fireman or you're a federal fireman. I don't care. You can come to our events.
That's great.
Yeah, I was a volunteer for 6 years.
Absolutely. Volunteer fireman, 100%. Because that is it, and I have a lot of friends who are firemen, right? Whether that's city or state and I know that there's an ongoing joking riff between, police and fire, and that will always be that way. But fire goes through some stuff, man. Like I have conversations with buddies of mine that, wildland firefighters and city fire, they go through it the same as our police and our military do. So yeah, so that's my, and Heroes on the Water just did their own study recently and concluded the study here recently of all they got with as many of our past participants as they could, right? And did a study. I'm looking at my notes here so I don't miss it.
Yeah, go ahead.
88% of Heroes on the Water participants said that coming to one event gave them the confidence to develop new relationships in their life. That's huge. That's 88%. Wow. 96% said that kayak fishing helped them become more mindful, right? 98% said coming to our events helped them relax. That's huge. Those are big numbers.
That's awesome.
So that's
crazy numbers. Yeah, that's crazy. You know what a business would do to get anywhere close to that in their business with those types of metrics? That's hey man, that's just hats off to the organization and everybody that's behind it, to the people that are volunteering, to the people that are going and then telling their friends, hey, I went to this event. You're a veteran, you're a first responder, you should get out there, because it's those are numbers that you don't see. And I say this coming out of 25, 30 years in business management, and man, numbers like that's crazy. I mean, that is an organization that is actually hitting its goals. Now, I know the goals are 100% on all of those, but there is an impossibility factor
right.
that we have to recognize in the real world. But that is crazy.
One clarification I need to make, because like I said earlier, there was going to be national people. Laura Lindsay is an amazing person with how national she does so much for the organization. I love her to death. She's texting me right now. And it kind of segued me into a different part of my talking points. So the How Therapeutic program did the study, not our kayak fishing, not the actual How kayak fishing program, which segues me into the fact that the organization currently has 6 therapeutic programs across the nation, and those programs deal directly with Veterans Affairs and the Department of Defense. And though it's the same kayak fishing type of program, but it deals directly with the VA and DOD. And there's 2 more in the works coming up, that they're trying to get going, 2 more therapeutic programs. So, like I said, How has gotten fairly large in 15 years. There's a lot of good veterans organizations that everybody knows the name of. And in the kayak fishing community, you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that hadn't at least heard of Heroes on the Water or How. But outside the kayak fishing community, even in the general fishing community, we need to spread the word a little bit more. And then outside fishing entirely, just getting, you have no idea how many times I hear, well, I didn't even know you guys existed. And to me, it sounds unfathomable because it's Heroes on the Water is a huge part of my life. Whether I talk to Thien 4 or 5 times a week, How is a huge.
He hasn't blocked you yet.
No, so
I could say that I know Zach outside of. I've already known him.
So it's a huge part of my life. I do a lot with How, and it's something that I'm. When we're old and gray and we're walking around with canes and walkers, and because I'm not a veteran myself, I'm a civilian. I've never been in the military. I was raised by a World War II and Korea War veteran. My grandfather was a veteran, so I've always had a healthy respect for veterans. But when I'm old and gray and talking about the good old days, my work with How is something that I'm going to look back on with like the most pride of anything I've done outside of my family. I say it all the time, like no big fish, no accomplishment, no pro staff, no team, being on a team, nothing compares to the pride that I get helping get guys like Thien. Nothing.
Well, it'd be really, let's think about it. How could you not feel that way?
Right.
It's, and I'm going to say this, and I can say this because I'm not affiliated with Heroes on the Water. So to the national folks that are watching or listening later, I apologize if you don't want me to say this, but I'm going to say it. There are a lot of groups out there. Now, I am familiar with Heroes on the Water. I have been for quite some time, many years actually. But there are a lot of knockoffs, I should say, where and specifically guides that will say, we're doing this program for veterans, and then they're charging them. And they're charging them essentially $20 off their full guide price. And I want to make sure people, because there was a stink, especially over COVID, there was a lot of that going on where people were saying, here's our Veterans on the Water thing, and then you turn out it's like $500. Like, what? That is not what this is. And I want people to really understand that this is not about a guide going out and fishing with somebody and getting some kickbacks on the back end or anything like that. This is a true organization that has a mission to help the first responders and veterans and to get them out on the water.
Yeah, and when we say, and I want that to be, people to drive that home. When we say free, we mean it's free. You don't have to do anything. Even, getting into local lakes. When we have lake events, I sit at the front booth of that lake and pay for every single veteran to get and first responder to get in that lake. So they don't even have to pay entry to the lake.
Wow. And that would be acceptable.
Right.
that would be acceptable
to get
too.
A lake?
Yeah.
Well, you know that, Ed. You got to pay to park.
It's funny you guys are talking about money because I actually tried to give my guide a tip. I don't remember, it was like $50, $100 or whatever. That's how good of a time I had. And I was basing that on how much I would expect to pay normally, right? And he didn't hear of it. He goes, no way, absolutely not. And I want to stress that all these people are veteran. They're all volunteering their time. It's time away from their families, time away from work and whatever. And I always tell my kids that time is the most valuable thing you can give, and they're giving that to us, and it's very appreciated.
Well, and you can be sure that they're coming out of it feeling just as good at the end of the day.
Well, I do believe there's a New Jersey chapter, so I think
Yes.
Rich and I we should definitely do some volunteer stuff.
Yeah, we had kicked. It's funny the amount of things that Ed and I kick around in the background, like what the things that we want to do. I recently got involved with another organization, but we were talking about getting involved with Heroes on the Water before that. But I'm still thinking I probably have a little extra time. Let me ask you this though, Zach. So are these actual fishing guides that are going out, or are they experienced kayak anglers that are going, one-on-one with the heroes when they head out onto the water?
No, they're not actually licensed guides with the state. We call them guides, but our chapter, if you want to be a volunteer guide for our chapter, I Facebook stalk people like no tomorrow. Like if someone reaches out to me and says, "Hey, I'd love to come out," I will go to their Facebook page and shoot them a friend request and make sure that they didn't start kayak fishing 2 weeks ago.
Right.
If you're, especially our ocean events, I make sure that, when we launch on the central coast of California, that all of our guides have done it themselves, and they've done it in horrible weather. So no, they're not actually licensed guides. We just call them that. They're volunteers just like everybody else. But I do make sure that they are experienced kayak anglers. And I saw.
So Ed, it sounds like we could do that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
I think we both would qualify.
Yeah, you definitely would. And I see down here in the comments, Brian Clark said, "We're paid with smiles and laughs. It's the best non-monetary job he's ever had." Brian is the coordinator for the Northwest Arkansas chapter, and someone who I talk to constantly. Like I said, I'm all over the place for how. So I follow most of the chapters on Facebook, and I've reached out to most of the other, especially when I first took over this chapter, right? I had a million questions, because this chapter was started by 2 active duty Air Force airmen who since got stationed somewhere else. And then somebody else took over the chapter. Corey and his wife took over the chapter. And they I was looking into starting another chapter over here in the Central Valley in the Bakersfield area. And Corey contacted me. I was already guiding with the chapter, and Corey was, said, "Hey, I'm looking to step down. If you want to just take over this chapter and do it that way, that would be great." And that was 2018, and I've been the coordinator since 2018. But the team that I have, my assistant coordinator is a Marine Corps veteran. My treasurer, Andy, my secretary, Rick, that Thien brought up. Rick is the Desert Storm Army veteran. I have a team behind me that makes me look good. Like I'm all over the place, and I'm kind of the face of our chapter, even though it's not a great looking face. I'm the face of our chapter. But it's really my team that makes me look good. National, I'm not going to say that National is happy with our chapter, and we've grown this chapter in huge ways since 2018 when I took over. I think we had 8 kayaks in 2018. Now we have 22.
Wow.
I've built relationships with local tackle shops and distributors and Abu Garcia reps and all over, because I do work at a tackle shop one day a week from my normal job. I'm one of those guys that just has to be busy all the time, right? It's without the help of those, like I said, we're 100% donation based. We could not run without donations. And so here here in Bakersfield, we have Cope's Tackle and Rod Shop. Thien's very familiar. He's a customer of ours. And Cope's Tackle and Rod Shop, one of the owners, Jared, is a Marine Corps veteran. And it doesn't matter what I come to them with. Hey, we need this. Hey, we're having this event. Cope's supports our chapter like nothing I've ever seen, and they never question. I would be willing to bet that since 2018, I'd be willing to bet that Cope's has donated in excess of $25,000 to our chapter in gear and monetary donations. And the organization wouldn't exist without businesses like that. Central Coast Kayaks in Pismo Beach, Tom Riley, the owner of that shop, he's been involved with this chapter and donating to this chapter since it started. And like I said, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And all of us get a great deal of satisfaction out of doing this, but we wouldn't be able to do it without the donations that we get from individuals or the local businesses. The local community is what keeps individual HOW chapters going.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously based on what Thien said, I mean, you went from first time out on the water and now you have your own fishing kayak. I have to ask you, what kind of kayak do you have? I have
a New Canoe Unlimited.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right. You were saying you got the motor on there.
Mike's a New Canoe guy.
Yeah. And one of our buddies uses a New Canoe. All right. And what's your favorite species to go out for now?
The most I actually catch are like kelp bass, sand bass, calico bass. But my favorite so far has been probably lingcod.
I want to get a lingcod. They're so nasty.
Have you got one of the California sheepshead yet?
Yes, I have.
They're cool.
Yeah,
that's on my bucket list.
So actually, that brings up a question. So somebody hooks into something like a lingcod, or let's say they hook into something. They're out there. They're not incredibly experienced. It's a nice size fish. It's got teeth. Is the guide coming over and netting it?
Yep. The guide is with it right there with you, and he takes care of all that.
Okay.
Any of the any of the toothy critters that we catch, our guides net those fish, and then they are dispatched appropriately.
I was going to say, yeah, because you don't want to have somebody who's new with a toothy critter in their lap or hanging off the side.
Yeah, because
having to string 40 or 20, 30, 40 pounds over the side when you're leaning offshore.
Because lingcod and halibut, they're great fighters, but it's when you get them up to the kayak, as soon as their head breaks the surface of the water, they go nuts. They go absolutely crazy. And sometimes, like, the small lingcod are the worst. They'll go into these like crocodile death rolls and just spin and spin. And I believe Thien got a legal lingcod his first time out with us.
Really?
And that's pretty good. It's not everybody does that their first time out. I mean, like you said, he got a limit of rockfish, which is 10 rockfish, and a lingcod.
I know it. Go ahead.
I got to put this in.
I see it.
I have to. You should volunteer to net fish.
All right. The backstory, Zach and Thien. I am the worst person ever at netting fish from a kayak. I lose so many fish doing that, and it's all on video so people can see it. So I kind of own it. I don't deny it. But I will say this: I can net from a boat, and I think I could net somebody else's fish from a kayak. It's the whole thing of trying to not snap the rod and high stick it, and the fact that I was using a very, very cheap net for so long. I had a $16 net that I was using.
Ed, is this the excuse he always comes up with?
We're in the past, Rich was fat dad fishing, and I've always told him he should change it to frugal dad fishing.
Yeah. Well, the Heroes on the Water will appreciate this. It's easy to lose equipment when you're out on the water in a kayak.
100%.
And so one of the reasons that so for those that don't know, Zach makes beautiful fishing rods. And and I keep telling him I want to get one of his rods. I mean, it's Ed, I'll send you some pictures. They're stunning.
Yeah,
and Yeah, he's working on some now.
Wow.
But I'm not going to buy
That's
one
awesome.
because I'm afraid I'll lose it. And I have lost a lot of equipment on kayaks. So, I try to be as frugal as I can. I try to be like the everyman fishing, the people that aren't spending $450 on a reel. And Ed, I know you're not that guy, but
My net
$450
cost
on
me
the
$24 at Walmart.
what did?
My net was $24 at Walmart.
Yeah, well, that's like $8 more than I spent. I've also lost 3 nets.
And
I now have a really nice Ego floating net.
those Ego
I
nets
spent
are
$100.
nice. On the saltwater in California, there's a law that you have to have an 18-inch landing net. So I keep a net with me all the time on the saltwater, but I never use it unless it's a HOW event, right? And even most of the HOW events, like I can talk about Heroes on the Water all day, but when it comes to event day, I'm like a giant stress ball. You know what I mean? So I actually, most of the time I try not to be one of the volunteer guides at events, because I just kind of cruise around and go from person to person, making sure everything's copacetic.
Sure.
But when I'm personally fishing in the ocean, I use a gaff over a net. The only reason I have a net is because the law states that I have to.
Well, again, you're in California, so we won't get political, but it's a little different. The things that you guys do.
And
well, New Jersey's a step behind.
Right. Yeah, you're right there with us.
Yeah, they're getting pretty close. All right. So we have about 10 minutes left. So I want to let people know that are watching live, if you have any questions, make sure you get them in now. Zach, Thien, is there anything that you want to go over that we haven't talked about up to this point?
I think, and we talked about it a little bit, but I talked about it, but I think it's very important for veterans and first responders. I want people to try to get their friends to come to these events, because they might not know the amount of stress they're under, and how much they need an event like this. Because like we're men, right? We bottle stuff up forever until we pop. And that's not healthy. It's especially now, everybody's talking about mental health and how important it is. And mental health affects your physical health, so we just need to nip this in the bud and get people out there and get people to decompress.
Absolutely. What a great way to do it.
And
go ahead, Zach.
And my goal, is in line with the national goal, organization's goals. But I will say that my personal goal is to turn every one of our participants into a kayak angler. And I can't tell you how many of our participants are like Thien and are great friends of mine now. And these relationships are built because of Heroes on the Water. If he is willing to, and if he could, I would like to ask Thien, and so people can hear this, what Heroes on the Water and coming to our program has done, as far as his family goes.
Oh, wow. So my son, Giovanni, he actually came out to an event. Like Zach talked before about how they invite the families to come out. But my son comes out with us on when it's freshwater. He comes out and he fishes with us, and every last one of the guides, they treat him like they've known him forever. A funny thing is, because every time I go to an event, Andy Dibburn, he goes, "Hey man, when you coming out to San Luis, go fishing. Let's go get some sharks. Gio will love it." And it's so refreshing, and it's so nice to hear that like they treat me, and my family like we've known each other forever, and you can't fake that, and it means a lot to me. It made mine and my son's relationship better, because we try to go fishing all the time. He comes with me. He loves it. He loves seeing Zach in the tackle shop. He goes every time. Funny thing is, like I go to the store just to go get groceries or whatever, but he'll ask me, "Where are you going? Are you going to Copes?" Because he just wants to go hang out, and he's a fisherman himself, and he loves it, and it's brought us closer. We're actually planning another fishing trip here in a few months, and it's been great. My whole family's gone out. Last summer we all went down to San Diego. We went tuna fishing. My daughter was 5 at the time, and she was out there. We're out there all day, about 8 hours, and had a great time.
How'd your daughter like it? Because I found that out of my son and my daughter, it's my daughter that loves fishing more than my son.
So it was her first rough experience in the ocean. So it was going out there. It was kind of sketchy, but then we found the birds and the boils, and then we were all catching fish, and we were going through. We caught huge bonita, and we all had a great time. She was having a good old time.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I mean, it goes beyond just the call them hero. It's, and I don't think a lot of people understand that. An organization like this, the impact. It's not the single person always that's showing up. And I'll tell you what, it sounds like your son is hooked. And your son in 20 years is going to be like all of us who spend an entire Saturday at a local shop. Not necessarily, you didn't need anything. You just need to go in and make that connection with people because you couldn't get on the water. And I know my local shops like that. I'll go in, I'll buy a couple whatevers that I don't need. I have a whole bunch of tackle in my truck that I don't need just because I go down there and, just to hang out and talk to the guys coming in and out. And that's a pretty cool thing. All right. Well, we're about the hour right now. So unless Ed, did I miss any questions in there?
No, I think we're pretty good.
All right. Zach, Thien, I want to thank both of you. I will say, and Ed, I'm going to guess you're going to agree with me. Out of all of these that we've been doing for a couple of years now, or at least I have, this is probably the most meaningful live stream / podcast that we've done. As far as, just the impact that an organization can make that's associated with fishing and man, I just want to thank you guys for coming on. Thank you to everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
In all of HAL across the country, whether you're going there as a veteran or a first responder, or you're going there as a volunteer, you're donating money or time. The story is incredible, and the impact that it has on not just the individuals, but on our society is something that is sorely lacking through the rest of the country right now in so many ways. And it's just great to see that there's an organization that has the priorities right and it's having such a positive impact. So I want to thank you both for coming on. Thanks, Zach, for everything that you do. Thanks to your entire leadership group. And for everybody watching, we'll be back to fishing in one of these upcoming episodes.
One thing, Rich, I'd like to say real quick before we sign off. Anybody in the comments, anybody has any questions, I've mentioned you can go to heroesonthewater.org, but do not hesitate to shoot me a friend request on Facebook. Zachariah Clift on Facebook, and I could talk about HAL for another 3 hours. So if you have any questions at all, you're interested in starting a chapter, you have any questions about doing that or finding a chapter, shoot me a message. I have no problem answering questions and talking about Heroes on the Water till I'm blue in the face.
Yeah. And I'll say this, if you can't find Zach on Facebook, my email address is rich@saltstrong.com. I can hook you up directly with him. It's definitely worth putting the email address out there for anyone to make it easier. So,
can you put links and stuff in the show description?
I can try. I'll at least have them in for the replays tomorrow. I'll see if I can get in there tonight to do it. So I'll do my best.
Guys,
so,
thank you.
Thanks
again,
guys,
much for having us.
You guys.
I think
thank you for your service.
The more we can get the Heroes on the Water name out there, the better it'll be for the organization and the veterans and first responders. So thanks for having us. That's me and Thien and myself are in California and you guys are in Jersey. So that in itself is impactful. That's 3,000 miles away. So the fact that we made this connection is great.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. And thanks for coming on, guys.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we'll be back next week with another show. Not going to leave a big outro here. So I'll just tell you the normal thing that I say, get out there, get on the waters and get some tight lines.
always wear your PFD.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul.